Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Jay Encarnacion, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are thrilled to have Stephan Thieringer, the CEO and founder of Human Innovation Garage. Stephan is a serial entrepreneur, executive coach, and a 2023 top 30 global coaching guru who's transformed leadership development for an array of high-end clients. With over a decade of experience, he's built Human Innovation Garage into a boutique firm that empowers leaders and teams through psychological safety and human connection. He's here to share his founding story, how his business is shaping the future of leadership coaching, and his vision for scaling this mission-driven venture. So let's dive right in. Stephan, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you, Jay. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, an absolute honor to have you here on the show today. So really would love to start at the very top. First and foremost, congratulations to you being named top 30 Global Coaching Guru in 2023. Just an incredible accolade there. Take us back to the beginning. What specific problem in the leadership development or coaching landscape really inspired you to start Human?
I love it's a great question. And, I always think we, as human beings, you said one of the big things for me is transformation, but also human connection. And I think that's the piece where I'm really very adamant about in context of saying, hey, how do we really make a difference for the human being and how they show up? And so when accolades really come into play, what does that really mean to somebody? Just picture yourself, you're sitting in an audience of a talk, or you're getting somebody to experience where somebody says, oh my God, you meet your partner's best friend the first time, and he or she says, oh, this is an amazing person. They're such great people. And now suddenly you have that human experience yourself. And that's all that counts. Maya Angelou comes to mind. It's never about accolades. It's never about the resume. It's never about the degree or the education. It's about how do you make people feel? And I think in 2025 in particular, we have to talk more and more, and we're still not talking enough about what is soft skill, what is human experience, what does inspirational leadership in the context of inspiring people in redefining who you are and rediscovering who you are, and also redefining what your future looks like. So that really is for us in the context of the Human Innovation Garage, as it says, Human Innovation Garage, because we all have these brilliant, beautiful pieces. So how do we put them together? So for me, the journey was really always the beacon was people. My first career was hospitality. That's how I ended up also in the early 90s in the United States, directly brought to the US by the original founder, one of the three original founders of the Ritz-Carlton Hotels, which was a gentleman who I deeply admired and was inspired by, Siggy Brauer. Never spoke a word of German to me, even though he was German.
And interesting.
And it was I will never forget this as we're talking about it. I was technically very good for coming from hospitality. One of the things I think, expect from people in hospitality is the human connection. But he said to me, and I will never, now that we're talking about, and you asked the question, it just really came to mind. He said to me 2 or 3 weeks in, he says, you have failed. And I was in Boston at the Ritz, which was considered the original Ritz-Carlton. And I'm saying to him, well, what do you mean I have failed? People don't appreciate the way you talk to them. I said, what do you mean? And he goes, you don't say, hello, how are you? Great to see you. You just say, hello, good morning, hello, which is very Germanic, right? That's what we do. But again, it's the human experience that you have with me, that I have with you, that somebody else has with somebody else. That's what's counting. Right? You may not remember their face, but you will always and ever remember how they made you feel.
Yes.
And so fast forward, I stumbled into a couple of guys after I was working in New York in a small hotel some people may have heard about. It's no longer a hotel, but it was the Waldorf Astoria.
Oh, wow.
And it was a hotel manager there. And then stumbled from there into 2 guys who were building an e-learning. At this point, actually, was a training application. Again, at the center here, people, and it was actually, believe it or not, back in the late 90s about sexual harassment, discrimination. At a later point, we then added also diversity training to that. Fast forward to that, it brought us to a learning platform which was the first e-learning platform, which was, we called it back then application service provider. Now it's called SaaS or PaaS, as platform as a service. And that then brought me further into the next level. Did my audio just disappear?
Nope, you're still good.
I, for some reason, can't hear you.
Interesting.
Okay, so my audio is there. I'm going to take my headphones off, and as long as you tell me you can hear me, we're good.
Yep, you're good.
And so it was a big piece then migrating into e-learning. What is the impact on people? And I was very fascinated by one to many. And that's what e-learning really was all about in terms of the platforms, in terms of all the other pieces. And it was that then I did for, God, we started in the late 90s. I did e-learning until 2012, which was then particularly dominantly the last 4 years in India, where we created an federated search engine. Again, the impact being people. And then I think entrepreneurs listening to this need to hear it. On a Friday, I decided I'm not coming back. I was somewhat fed up with investors and board and everything else. And partially was my own doing and journey that in retrospect today I understand. Then I didn't understand it. I was just angry and pissed and mad, and I lost money and everything else. And that brought me into coaching. And again, the beacon always people. And I think the coaches and therapists who are most screwed up, they're the best. And yeah, I was one of those people who had to own my piece there. And yeah, that was it.
Amazing. Amazing. With that, I would definitely love to understand more of the nuts and bolts of what you're doing with the Human Innovation Garage for our listeners, especially the ones that can end up being clients of yours. So how are you really generating revenue today as far as the core offer? I know you have the one-on-one coaching, the team retreats, or the organizational optimization blueprint. How is that
Yep.
structured for your clients when they come to you?
First of all, I want to compliment you. Not many podcast hosts I speak to know as much about what we do as you do, just by some of the things you said. Let me say this. I think it's about human impact, and one of the things I've talked about, and I think more and more people are talking about now, is work and life balance doesn't exist. And I'm purposely going to pause here for a moment because people go, "What are you talking about?" Because I think it's work and life integration, right? And if you really, from a core standpoint and the work and how we work, look at what a human being is and how, at the very core, who we are, that's what we bring to the party, so to speak, then core values and understanding who you are is so important, right? Because we talk very easily, we go to organizations and people say, "Oh, we're going to do leadership skills today and you're going to be a great leader. Congratulations. We're going to do what, 15 weeks of a course, and that makes you a great leader." And leadership is not, and I think it's somewhere on our site, we're actually about to publish a new site as well. It's not a course. It's not a one-day experience or a weekend. It's a journey. It's learning. It's making mistakes. It's making mistakes in the human interactions. It's learning from them, being willing to be reflective. What I talk a lot with my clients about, and we actually also work on frameworks with that, is vision, action, reflection. We're very good in this is the vision. We're very good to then take action. But what we don't do, because we don't want to do it, is we're not willing to sit down and say, this is what I did well. This is what I didn't do so well. So that self-confidence and unlocking that inner potential, I want to call it, which are exercises designed not just to boost self-esteem and emotional intelligence, but also connection with yourself, which then allows you to connect externally. So that's one part to the answer to the question in regards to what do we do with people.
Yep.
And then I think the second part is any human interaction, and we all know this from relationships and anything else, is clarity, right? The reflection to yourself, the defining of core values, and then being able, based on those core values, to make very clear and intentional choices. Because if we think about, and some of your listeners may resonate, we are in a conformity society. And I say this all the time. We are expected, if I say, "Hey, Jay, can you do me a favor? And you should do this by tomorrow night." Well, what is your expectation? Your expectation is that I'm expecting you to say yes. And the other fear then is if you don't say yes, oh my God, particularly if I'm your boss or you're my boss and the whole thing is in reversal. The alignment also with those decisions to say yes or no, to have a boundary, but also make an intentional choice that aligns with your, as many coaches like to say, true self or your inner self or your real self in terms of authenticity. That's, I think, another piece. And That then for us, oftentimes in early stages and working with clients, draws into a personal mission statement, and a mission statement that becomes your compass, right? The personal mission statement in regards to saying, hey, this is what this is who I am, this is what my mission is in personal and in life and in business. And oftentimes people will say, you know what, the reason why I'm in business is because I want to create legacy. And so that's another distinction where we really seek to work with people who understand the difference between legacy and legend, because legacy is sustainable, is there, is an impact. Legend is me, and I understand it. I used to be that guy who was all about me. It was about, yeah, it was a little bit the me show and the image manager, and everything came out. And I think as you start getting older and you start getting maybe wiser, it's not just a question of age. I've met some young people who have incredibly beautiful and old souls. I think the two, three things that young generational entrepreneurs often define as success is money, assets, and power. What really I think as you get older is success is freedom and peace. And that doesn't mean money is not important. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is the way you employ it and the way you affect the world around you. That's a distinction. So maybe at a high level that answered some of your questions. And that's also anybody listening, if that is where you're at, the renewed vision for life. Who am I? Where do I want to go? That's really the people who we love working with, and also who we invite to the retreats, right? The stuck in wherever they're stuck in. Some people, one divorce, two divorce, three divorce, loneliness at the top is real. Or loneliness in general, I think in 2025 is very real. So finding a community of alike and finding a support and guidance system there, I think is a huge factor to your own personal freedom.
I love it. I love it. So with that being said, on that front and everything that you're doing and how passionate you are, Stephan, incredible. Just hearing your passion there. What's working best for you right now as far as the acquisition side, whether that be referrals and word of mouth from all the success that you're seeing, or more ads, social media, or organic outreach? How does that look?
It's fascinating, and it's interesting you asked that question. I just had this conversation with somebody the other day.
Yeah.
Our entire business in 12 years has been built on personal referral and on introductions, or simply the biggest marketing strategy for me is being at a conference and speaking, or being part of a panel, or being exposed in one way or another. And sometimes it's the willingness to polarize. And that has worked for us. So we're changing in 2025 the strategy a little bit, for the simple reason that from a capacity, but also from an energy gauge standpoint, I want to be available for the retreats. We're about a month out for a retreat up in Vermont, and we're doing later in 2025. We're doing a couple of retreats, one in the Dominican Republic. We're doing one in Costa Rica. And the capacity there is about 20 people, but those 20 people, they're expecting close access. They're expecting a deep impact. And that is something which I personally love. I love the energy around people. And that's something which I loved in hospitality, why I did it in the first place. So there's that beacon there again. So for us, in those instances, we will go more to social media. We will also do probably some live chats. We'll do some LinkedIn lives. We're going to be joint venturing with a couple of people for the simple reason of referral on the sales side. And then the other part is we do smaller retreats and smaller talks. And then that kind of leads then, as anybody who understands sales, that's a progressive sale, right? It's that escalator you go up, where a little access, more access, you want all the access. Okay. And so I think that's a model that's many times been worked, and we're doing essentially now that I want to be a little bit more focused on the retreats and maybe more selective about the people I work with personally. That's a big part for that.
Amazing. So on that side of things, as far as the process goes, the sales process,
Yeah.
are you running most of the show on your own? Do you have a sales team or marketing team, or are you really running it from start to finish?
So to be very transparent and honest, we don't really have a big marketing team. So marketing for us is very momentous, so to speak, when we need it. And for that, I use a local assistant. She is jack of all trades. And then I have a couple of virtual assistants who I use, one for marketing, which is mostly on the graphic design side. And then somebody else who I use on the side of things like small little reels and snippets, particularly when we do it on Instagram. One of my passion projects, which I loved most, and we purposely kept it very simple, was Raw Rants, which is my podcast. And we're fading that out. But there was a thing. Are we X-rated on the show? Can I say the word?
Yeah,
Okay, so there was this thing about the fuck yes in life.
I love it.
And it was very random. I would walk up to people and say, hey, give me the fuck yes. What was the reason fuck yes for you? And my absolute favorite on my podcast tour was a young lady from Japan. It was somewhere between, I think it was Kingston, Ontario, somewhere on the way between Toronto and Montreal. We stayed a night over, and we being my sheepadoodle, Gracie and I. And we stayed over at a hotel, and in the morning I'm walking out of the front at the front desk by, and I said, we got to do one of those. And she goes, the bottom line was, fuck yes to chocolate after midnight. It was my absolute favorite.
Love
Um, but again, that speaks to the human being. It's so visceral. It's there. It's right on the surface. And I think that's the kind of stuff we don't allow ourselves often to really engage in. Marketing, not much. We do it for events. We collaborate. There's a lot of events now, and I'm not giving away any secrets here, where you have collaboration from the actual venue as well, who will help you marketing, give you some materials. And then on the sales side, initially, if that's, do we do like anybody else does, the QR code in a presentation and that then click somewhere else, or you can send a text message where we use particular text message programs where we then say, hey, if you text XYZ, you get this. Okay, so now you get that. And then comes this little funnel technology that everybody uses who's got half a brain these days. And I'm not very good at it. It's not my brain, it's somebody else's brain, but it's there. So it's one of those things where I think you don't need a big team to make impact. You need to be smart how you create the ripple effect. And I think that for me is really on that million people goal. That's really for me the mission now.
I love that. So on that front, it really sounds like things are clicking on all cylinders for you here, Stephan. So what would you point to, if anything at all, as your biggest bottleneck to growth, whether that be quality lead generation, converting those leads into clients, delivering programs with your current fulfillment structure? How does that look on the bottleneck side?
I'm laughing because I'm going, but the biggest bottleneck to delivering this is me.
Yeah.
Because there comes this Germanic, I'll call it this Germanic micromanager who needs to have things certain ways.
Yeah.
And for me, the biggest challenge, and this is why this podcast tour was so much fun, doing these little random F yeses
Yes.
was perfect because I didn't edit them. I recorded it, I sent it off to Farah, and she put the wrapper around, and that was it. And I had to live with it. They live now out there. And there's some of them I look at and I go, oh my God, they look terrible. I look tired. And I would have probably, if I would have thought about it and listened to it again, I would have probably never, ever would have done that.
Yeah.
And that's the part which is so important. And it's, yeah, it's that, I think that's the way to challenge yourself. Other than that bottleneck, I think reach is always a big part. Our machine is not the machine of a Tony Robbins, which I will never compare myself with, even though I ended up on the same list as him. And I have so much respect for him, but particularly for when we're talking about sales and machinery and everything else, that's the piece which is just incredible. For us, a big part of focus will be also this year to everybody else who's really in the market, recording more video in an environment like we're sitting, which is why I'm also sitting in the studio. And so these are the kinds of things that will be small little pieces, but they may have some value. They will add some. And that's a big part. And I think I'll tell you honestly, the other part is clarity we talked about for people. And we are finally, I think, in 2025 coming to a point where from a productization and from an offering standpoint, we're going to become so much clearer than we've ever been in the past that hopefully will get us a little closer to where we want to go. And like to call this inspired standard. Every week, every month, we learn what we did well and what we didn't do well. And we say, okay, here we can learn from this reflection piece, what we talked about earlier. And to be able to say, hey, okay, this worked, this didn't work, let's change it with good reason. And let's not be stupid about it. But at the same time, also, let's acknowledge that what I said, what someone else said, and it doesn't even have to come from a place of authority, just from a simple place of, hey, here's what it is. That makes a big difference.
I love it. I love it. So with that, with this time now, before we wrap up, I want to go into a bit of a lightning round here, Stephan. So really just 1 to 2 sentences to make it quick for our listeners before we wrap up. But I would really love to know, what is your vision for continuing to grow the Human Innovation Garage over the next 6 to 12 months, whether that be any performance targets, revenue targets, impact goals? What are you laser focused on for the next year to keep
Yes.
growth going?
I think that's excellent. So we want to add somewhere between 1.5 and $2 million on retreats alone. That's a big part for us because that's a huge factor. And if anybody does retreats, our retreats, that retreat ticket
Mhm.
starts anywhere between 75, 8,500 to about 15,000, just to give people a little bit of a metric here also. The second piece for us is, and for me in particular, is being more present at conferences again in the context of keynotes and panels and contribution. I've made myself that promise. So if you're out there, say hello. If you want me to be out there, come and get us. That's the second piece. And then the third piece, really big vision for us, is having a little bit more presence in Europe again. We have currently a very close relationship with a company out of London who has the headquarters there now, and then into just my native world, Switzerland, Austria, Germany. But
Beautiful.
I think we have to face a reality currently. The the welcome on both sides is reserved right now a little bit. I think we need to just let that cool a little bit. And so that's why that'll probably be a Q3, Q4 vision. And then the last piece for us is from a marketing standpoint. I just actually today submitted it for the final review from the design group for the layout, is a journal booklet, which comes out of a thing that I host every Thursday morning, which is called Coffee Chat or Inspirational Coffee Chat.
Yeah.
And those are little things like vulnerability exercises, like what is fear? What does home mean? How difficult is it to have a difficult conversation? What is a difficult conversation? So it's a journaling exercise for every week, and it becomes a subscription model. Again, we talked about marketing, advertising. That becomes, again, a low entry access to some things that we do, access to some things that we initiate. And then you want to do more, we'd love to have everybody.
Incredible. And then just last question for you here before you wrap up. What is a piece of advice, Stephan, that you can give to our listeners right now, other founders, entrepreneurs tuning in, listening to how incredibly passionate and successful you've been? What can you offer them before we head out?
The biggest thing that I look at with great envy today at the younger generation or any entrepreneur today starting is the power of community. The time when I came to the table, it was about, hey, you know what? Here is a thing that you need to do. Go figure it out yourself, which was me. My father dealt with me this way. The power of community and learning from others who've been there and listening, absorbing it without necessarily rebuttaling it or challenging it, but picking up the pieces that are out there that allow you to build whatever that is you're building, if that's building yourself or if that's building the particular organization, a company, if that's technology, if it's service business, whatever it may be. That is, I think, the most powerful thing you can source to and make that a resource for yourself.
Amazing. I love it. And with that right there, that is going to wrap up another inspiring episode here of Founders Future. Stephan, just want to thank you again. An incredible
Thank you.
journey that you've been on. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights. I absolutely love the episode. To our listeners, if you did enjoy this episode, which I know so many of you have, as did I, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class marketing systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we'll see you on the next one.